there out in the darkness, and Hector is running, falls on his face, he falls on his face.
I told the fool he should have waited on his cue.
Hi, I'm Jamie Davis. Thanks for joining me. You know, in the world of theater, we often think of the stars as just the actors on the stage. But the reality is, there are lots of stars, just like in the night sky. Sometimes you don't see them all. It doesn't mean they're not there. Sometimes they're over the stage, sometimes they're in the wings beside the stage. I hope they're not under the stage, but you never know. Some of them have worked on the show for weeks or months before, and they're not even there when the show is produced. But that doesn't mean they're not stars. In this series, we're going to meet some of those stars. So join me here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my trailer. It's me, Jamie Davis. I'm your host here for Hidden Stars. It is great to have you again. Are you excited? I am, because today the hidden star we're going to meet is Savannah Bell. Savannah is awesome. She is an electrician on Broadway. It means she works with lights. She's going to tell us all about that. And she is also the Ballet Hispanico Lighting Supervisor. Sounds really important, and it is, and we'll learn why. And she's going to talk to us all about what it means to be an electrician in the theater world, and maybe that's something you want to consider doing. If so, listen closely. Maybe you've never heard of it, and you want to learn it. It's all going to be good stuff. But before we do that and get to the interview, I want to welcome our feature and host school for the day, and that is Southmore High School from Moore, Oklahoma, and their teacher, mentor, drama coach, director, all things theater, Miss Brooke Perez. And welcome, you guys. It's great to have you. And as a feature school, we're going to see some of their show shots right now and hear just a quick word from Brooke, and then we'll jump right into the interview with Savannah and go from there. But let's do that now. It's time for 15 seconds of fame for you, Southmore. Let's do it.
Hello, I'm Brooke Perez from Southmore High School in Moore Public Schools. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my Southmore theater students. I miss you guys. I miss the way you bless my life when you walk into my room every day. I know we're going to be together soon, and I cannot wait for that moment. Hugs and all my love. Love you guys. See you soon.
All right, everyone, welcome back. And it is time for us to meet Savannah Bell. Savannah, welcome. Welcome to Hidden Stars. It is so good to have you here with us. We're excited to learn about the world in which you dwell and you work and you thrive, right? And so I think if you ready to just jump right in?
Yeah.
Very good. No words of wisdom. Or do you just want to let's start getting to know about Savannah? Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Very good. So you know what? I always like to. Right, we're all about theater, so of course, let's start from the very beginning. Savannah, tell us, just so we can get to know you before we get to know what you do, because really, you know, in my experience in life, it's my past that forged what became my future. And so, you know, tell us a little bit about where you came from. Where did you grow up? What things in life as a child or as a high school student really formed you to want to be in lighting and in lighting design and electrician in the theater industry. And, you know, talk to us about high school and college and all of those things. Just dig in there and let us know, who is Savannah Bell? What is a Savannah Bell? Okay. So, man, it's just shine some light on that to have a really bad pun for you.
All right, will do. I am Savannah Bell. I was born and raised in Shawnee, Kansas, which is a suburb right outside of Kansas City. 20 minutes from farm and 20 minutes from city, if you've never been there. I grew up in dance lessons and gymnastics, doing sports like your typical child, but definitely leaned more towards the dancing. And so therefore, when I got to middle school and high school, I auditioned for the musicals. I did not get into the first one. The little audio crew thought it was okay. Auditioned for the second one, did get into that. Quickly realized that I did not want to be called out at all on the stage. I didn't want to be a soloist. I didn't want to have a specific world. I just wanted to be there to support the production and the chorus, dancing, not singing, etc. So that was in middle school. And then in high school, I auditioned for the first musical that came up, which was Grease. And I didn't get into it, but then they called me up afterward and they were like, actually, you did get into it. And I had a great little chorus role and I enjoyed it. But I was really kind of jealous of like these crew members that I saw doing these things. They were climbing up on the scaffolding and doing all sorts of fun things and becoming more of a family than we were in the cast. And so I was like, all right, so the next show, I'll definitely try that out. So I did. I joined the lighting crew on the next show. My dad is a residential electrician, so he wires up people's houses. And as a kid, I always went and did that with him. So I was like, all right, lighting. Plus, they told me I could climb the scaffolding. Let's go for it. So I did the lighting crew for the rest of that year, and I greatly enjoyed it. And between having designers come into our high school and everything else, I started to make connections and mentors and things like that. And they just continued to bring me and show me more and more things that the technical world could do. I really enjoyed building the sets with them after school because once again, it felt more like a family than the rehearsals did because we were all there just building together rather than having to listen to the director, all the time. So I did all of that. And through high school, I actually ended up getting connected to the new dinner theater, which is in Kansas City. It's a little regional dinner theater. They have equity actors, and things like that. But I actually became an electrician for their changeovers. So I would actually start work at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, and I work until 6 a.m. And then I'd go to school on Monday with no sleep, but I go get donuts. And then after school on Monday, I'd go back at about 6 p.m. and we'd work until 2 or 3 a.m. And then I'd get a little bit of sleep, and then I'd go back to school on Tuesday, and my regular life resumed. And so that was once every 2 to 3 months. But it brought in a good paycheck for what I knew in high school. And it ended up leading to being a spotlight there the summer before I went to college. So between all those people that I met, the designers or the master electrician that was at the new dinner theater, I was talking with them about college. I was pretty good at math. I was in calculus and physics and all that. And so I wanted a world, though, that I didn't get stuck behind a cubicle. And so I decided that maybe this theater world, this lighting world, could combine the two worlds that included math and my smart side of myself and a world of my creativity and hands-on and things like that. So I actually ended up going to Stevens College, and I graduated with a degree in a BFA in theater arts. And that was a 3-year, 2-summer program. So I actually got out of there way faster than anybody else. And that was my favorite part of that program. It was an all-women's school. And so that was a new experience. As for the tech crew in high school, it was all men, all guys. And so going and working with all women, doing theater with all women, that was super cool. And while I was in college, I worked at the Roadhouse that was connected to the large university next door. My favorite part was definitely the summer stocks. The summer we went to Okoboji, Iowa, where I got to design lights or design set or just work on shows, being a spotlight operator, a light board operator, or one time I was a stage manager. So we got a really well-rounded college experience there. And then right after college, I managed to get the apprenticeship at Santa Fe Opera as an electrics intern. So
that's and I know from others and from past conversation with you, that's quite a special thing right out of college.
Yeah. I felt pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And would you say that is how'd that happen? How'd that happen?
I figured my awesome resume got me into it. But I was actually told halfway through the summer in Santa Fe, we sat down, checking in, telling me how I was doing, what I should work on more. And they actually said, "Hey, do you know how you got this job?" And I said, "How everybody else got the job." And they were like, "Actually, not going to lie, your resume didn't quite make it into the hire list because Stevens College is not not necessarily a super well-known college. It's not high up there on the theater list and stuff like that. But I had worked with a lighting designer at the Okoboji Summer Theater, and she happened to be great friends with the lighting director and master electrician at the Santa Fe Opera." And so she ended up telling them that I had applied and that they needed to hire me because that was the name I needed on my resume to move forward out of Podunk, Missouri, and Kansas. So, it was just that connection that I made that got me into Santa Fe.
Wow. Yeah. And I know that's a recurring theme from when we've talked to others, networking, who you know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jerry J said, "Be nice and do good work." Come up here. Yeah, it's true. It absolutely is true. So that must mean you're a nice person. Good job, Savannah.
I try.
And do good work, obviously. So there's a couple other things that you mentioned kind of in your journey so far that I want to go back to, if it's all right. Take a pause in your journey here. We'll pause your life. It's apropos for what we're all going through right now, and kind of talk a little bit about, to me, one of the things that left me scratching my head is I was told there would be no math, right? I love that you're obviously left brain, right brain. And, which is good. And math and creativity are combined in in this area of theatrical arts. Talk to me about how that is. What is it about math that you do? Are you figuring vectors and angles and just because we may have some students who love math and they love theater, don't think the two can mix, or more importantly, their parents are saying, "No, you need to focus on the math," and they're thinking, "Okay, I can work theater into this." Right?
Yeah,
So
that's what I did.
A little bit about that.
I convinced my physics teacher that I was going into an okay career. So basically, as a lighting designer, you do photometrics, and that indeed includes the angles that we're talking about and things like that in algebra. And that is just, you can see where your light is headed and how that angle is going to, how big that light will be on the ground as a lighting designer. Not to mention drafting. I'm often drafting in scale where it is and what it is that I'm doing. And so that is a very large part of it all. And so that takes my smart side of my brain is what I like to call it. And that I'm breaking things down. I'm making sure what I want to do will work, and drafting in general keeps that. And then in the other end of it, the creativity, taking the artistry, working with a director, and that's all as a designer. But as an electrician, I'm also doing the same thing. 5 feet of cable is not going to get me there. Oh, the data may drop in this amount of cable, and so you have to know all the ins and outs. And as a production electrician, you have to know all the ins and outs of power and make sure you're not going to blow something up. So.
That's a positive thing, unless it's an effect you want to blow up, right? No.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. So another thing I want to go back to just quickly, because last week I know that you mentioned you watched the episode with Jerry J and have worked with him in the past, you think, in Kansas City, which is cool. He broke down with us a little bit as a professor the difference between a BA and a BFA. And told us that mainly the main difference is a BFA is maybe more focused on a specific discipline, and you focus pretty much on that. However, it sounds like in your experience, at least at Stevens College, maybe a little different, right? That their program is a little more closer to what he described as a BA, which, not saying he's wrong. I think his description is more of a traditional, but talk a little bit about that, because obviously we have some students looking right now that are, and that's an important thing to them. Where do I go and what program? And knowing these options is a great thing. So hey, give us a little hurrah, hurrah for Stevens College, and
Will do.
it's at least for the ladies, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what that looks like.
Sounds good. Basically, my BFA was a primary focus in theater arts. So I had to do it all. I did acting class. I did multiple costume classes, multiple lighting, multiple scenic, some sound, and I did the whole world of theater, which I do definitely suggest that is what you go into, and we can get into that. But mine was still considered a BFA because the Stevens College program in general is a liberal arts program. So therefore, I didn't have to take half of the standard education classes that you have to take. Often in college, you have to go through and you have to take this many credits of English, this many credits of math, this many credits of chemistry, no matter what you're going into. And I only had to take one of each, most of which I actually had done in high school. So I ended up going in and I took a total of 3 educational classes while I was at Stevens. And then the rest were all in theater arts. So yeah, to piggyback off of Jerry and Jay a little bit last week or whenever that was, I think it's extremely important that you learn all of the world of theater. As a director, you need to know how to talk to all of us. As a lighting designer, I need to understand how that paint is going to reflect in the light, or how your scenic design and the angles and the shadows and things like that. And I need to understand what it is that the actor needs on stage, by how blinded can they be, or if they're doing flips, if you're doing an acrobatic show or a dance show, what is it? I work with dancers now and they're always complaining that they can't see the floor. And like as dance lighting, you don't want to see the floor often, and from the audience perspective, but they have to have a little bit of light to be able to know that they're about to land on the ground where they're supposed to land.
That would be a positive thing, I would think.
Yeah, I think, the more you know about everywhere, because also very rarely in this discipline do you do only what you're specified to do.
Yeah, and also, when I'm mentoring students who are moving on professionally, one of the things I tell them is you're going to probably work in regional theater, and when you do, the more you know, the better, the more hireable you are, if that's a word, right? The more marketable, maybe that's a better technical word. Because if you're going for a job and somebody else is going for a job and you're both good actors, good singers, good dancers, or lighting technicians, but you can also sew and you can also paint and you can also build a flat, then they're going to hire you if the other guy can't. So yeah, good. Would you say that's true in your world?
That's very true. I've also worked with, and I live in New York City now, and I've worked with several actors who are trying to make it, and one of them is a scenic painter on the side, and one of them, I have a couple that work as electricians with me off Broadway, and so how are you going to pay your bills?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you'll be Harrison Ford and get hired as a carpenter as you're walking across set and these stations. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I always go back to that one. It's just such a good story. All right, so now the most important thing, and this is a pop-up question that you may not be expecting. In all of what you said, the thing that really captured me the most was donuts. No, I'm just kidding.
Krispy Kreme too.
Oh, see, that's just not nice because we don't have one of those where I live.
Oh, man.
Just mean. I take back the nice. No, I'm kidding. All right, so Savannah, I think this is a good point to transition into more your professional world, more about day-to-day, what you do. And to begin, I want you to break down a term for us that you've used, that we've heard you use and refer to it as, that maybe some people haven't, right? Maybe some of our students have called what you do the lighting guy, right? And the term you've used is electrician. And we thought that was the guy who put new plugs in our house, which it is. But that's as you said, residential electrician. Let's start from the very beginning. Let's kind of break it down basics. Talk to us about that term, electrician. What does it entail? And are there sub roles within that that are different paths that we could take? And is there a ladder, or as you said, a scaffolding you have to climb on your way? Lighting designer, is that a top tier, or break that down for us?
Yeah. So I would say that every show has an electrics department, and from the bare bottom of the totem pole, you have the electricians, and they are the ones who are hanging the physical lights. They are plugging those physical lights into dimmer racks, into the wall, you know, depending on how your theater is laid out. They also deal with now all the fancy lighting, which also deals with data and things like that. And so that's how they get, you know, the networking from the computer that tells the light to move this direction or change that color. So yeah, they deal with those two big things, data and power, and hanging all of the lights. And then if you wanted to move up from the electrician, you might move to the assistant electrician position. And that is the guy that's got a little bit more of the plan in the head. So the designers create these plots, and then the master electrician and the assistant electrician implement the plots by using the electricians. And so the master electrician or the head electrician, they take that plot, they say, all right, this plot's going to need this much power dispersed in this way. And so they create the plan, they give that plan to the assistant electrician. The assistant electrician can implement it or lead the team to make it happen. And every once in a while, you have one more person above the head electrician if the show's big enough, and that's considered the production electrician. And that takes even more weight off of that head electrician's shoulders and just make sure, I mean, we're talking most touring shows have a production electrician that set it up. And that's making sure all of the lights have labels and making sure that, yeah, the power is breaking down properly.
Got you. And so those, you know, the electricians, those are the guys on the catwalk doing it, right? And I imagine the younger ones are probably the ones crawling around through the nitty gritty and all of that. And as you move up, talk to me a little bit about longevity in it. You know, is it something that if I wanted to go into this, is it something I could expect to do my entire career, or just the physicality of it? Does it, you know, do people wash out or?
Yeah. It is a labor job. It is a labor intense job. You are working at minimum probably 8 hours a day. In general, in this career, we don't really know what a 40-hour work week is. I would say I average at 55 hours a week, and more often than not, I'm pulling a 10 out of 12. So like 12-hour day with 2 1-hour breaks. So you're working for 10 hours of those 12. And your lights are between 18 pounds to 70 pounds. And so, yeah, in crawling through the catwalks on your hands and knees, or trying to fit or hang lights on a ladder sideways and things like that. So it is definitely a career where you have to take care of your body. You have to know how to stretch and also make sure you are lifting things properly. So I've seen people do this career all the way through to their 70s. I've also seen people who have moved through the union branches as they got older, saying, you know, I can't lift this light anymore, so I'm going to move to the props department, is one of my favorite, like, ways that they've gone through. But props, you know, you're dealing with hand props, you're dealing with things that actors take control. So yeah, they have a lighter load. But that is one thing to say, you know, as you get older, if you hurt your knee and you no longer can climb to the catwalk or something like that, they may send you into a different department. And it is definitely a labor intensive career. So
flexibility, both literally and figuratively, is an important trait to have if you want to go into this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very, very good. Well, you know, now that we have I'm sorry, we didn't talk about a lighting designer. One specific question I have is, do you find that most lighting designers begin as electricians, or is it something that they start from the beginning?
Yeah, so that is one thing that my tiny education did not tell me growing up. I always thought that I could be both an electrician and a designer, because that's what brought my two worlds together that I loved so much. In places like New York City, that is not the case. You are either electrician or design. So they are two branches on large theater production scales. Regional theater, you absolutely may be your very own master electrician as the designer. But so in the design department on the lighting side, you can have the lighting designer, the associate, and the assistant, and that is all the design team. The assistant at the bottom of the totem pole may be calling spotlight cues or making the paperwork look pretty. And the associate is creating that paperwork often. And then the designer is saying, this is the grand idea, and executing said grand idea. So I would say it would be awesome if all designers had an electrician-based knowledge, so they understood that a
Yes.
light can't necessarily hang where that light is, because, you know, they're on top of each other. But in the larger world of working from electrician to designer, it's not actually how it always goes about. And often there are definitely larger schools out there that teach you more to be a designer than like the education that I was brought up in. But honestly, that's the best part about this career, is that you will never stop learning. And so that's probably some key advice there. Just know that you're always going to have to teach yourself things. And if that's paperwork, because now you want to go towards the design route, or if that's more learning your way up the electrics ladder or things like that. So you can do everything, and having that base knowledge of everything is very good.
Very good. Very good. So having more of a flood allows you to then later be more focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing, the electrics department, it's labor intensive, and that's the most difficult part. As a designer and the design team, you are pulling longer hours, sitting behind your computer. So it is harder to stay awake, as well as, you know, the strain on your eyes. And the designer and the associate, that design team life is a more difficult financial balance. Often you're working on your own, you're working for yourself. A lot of designers create their own companies and things like that. So that's just something, a part of being a part of this career, that you have to understand and know.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. That's some of the stuff that you don't often hear people tell you, and that
Yeah.
how they're better for. So awesome. All right. So now that we have a better understanding of what it is that you do, let's kind of pick back up in your life journey. Maybe right there at Santa Fe Opera, you know, coming out of the Santa Fe Opera and that experience, how did you get from there here to New York City?
Yeah. So from the Santa Fe Opera, they actually connected me with a touring company called Networks. And so they put me on the tour Bullets Over Broadway, which was a first national, and with a whole bunch of new touring people. We were all in a brand new position, which was actually super cool. We all learned together as we grew up. And that was a 10-month tour. We went to 47 cities. And we had one-nighters and week sits. It was a whole span of the tour. So it was both the dirty and gritty tour and the fantastic tour life you dream of, maybe. And then from Bullets, I went to New York City, and I worked at the New York City Musical Festival. And that just kind of got me into the city. And honestly, I was planning on going back home to Kansas after that. But I stayed because people just kept throwing work at me. The more connections I made, the more offers I got. And so then I started working off Broadway. And then I started working corporate lighting, so doing events and stuff instead, because I learned that made more money.
There you go. Pay the bill.
Same exact electrician skills needed. So I went to corporate. And then I was in New York City for a year, and I was like, I want to go back out on the road. So then I did 2 Christmas shows. I did Elf twice, once as the assistant electrician and once as the head. And so that took me around the country. And then after Elf, I was like, you know what? I have this union card from touring, so let's try out Broadway. And so recently I've been doing a lot more work on Broadway. I sub at Chicago as one of their spotlight operators. That's super awesome and fun. And I discovered that in the city, that is definitely the work that I prefer. They are a community that is very cool, and a very old community with a lot of history. But on top of all that, I was still looking through all those electrician gigs that were paying the bills, essentially, and keeping my hands on. I was designing for the community theater nearby in New York City, or Stella Adler. And so I was doing all these tiny little designs, and I wanted more of that. And I've always tried to find the point in this career where you can combine the two. And I actually discovered that dance is where you can do that. As a dance lighting supervisor, you are adapting and creating the dance pieces and things like that for the company, and adapting on per venue as it tours. And so then I've got the pre-work that advances all of these works, and then I get into the theaters and I put my hands on the instruments and help and program and things like that. So I am actually now the dance lighting supervisor for Ballet Hispanico, which was kind of a dream job. So check on that.
Good job. All right.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, just, one of the themes that I love to tell students is that even now, as a young person, the things you do, the choices you make, can affect later. So I know you mentioned early on in your journey, you were in dance as a young Savannah. Did you find that even just that experience, even whether it was how extensive it was or not, does it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what it's like to be behind the lights a little tiny bit, as well as I recognize a few of the terms as the rehearsal director yells at the dancers. And then also, yeah, just having been surrounded in it as a kid, I knew that, dance companies had a repertoire and pieces that they continuously went to. So I kind of understood walking into it what it is that I would probably be looking at.
Okay, very good. And I know when you and I spoke before, you mentioned when you tour with Ballet Hispanico that it's a suitcase tour. I want to bring that back up because that's a term that actually I had never heard. And a suitcase tour, because I imagine any tour you've got a suitcase, but what does that mean? Just some great knowledge for us to hear.
The Broadway tours are not a suitcase tour. I was on a 4-truck tour. But Ballet Hispanico is a suitcase tour, and we essentially travel only within suitcases. So all of the costumes and props, they all get packed up into suitcases, and we check them as media on airplanes. So I believe the most that we've ever traveled with was 12 suitcases / cases. So yeah.
Got you. And those are not truck tours. Those, I guess, you are flights.
Yep, flights, and then we stuff them in a soccer mom minivan, and we drive around.
So I guess then the big difference for you is you have to be more flexible in that, right? Because you're not taking lighting instruments with you. You've got to use what's there
to
design something and taking the same thing and setting it up.
Yeah, I do a lot of substitutions, and that's the mathematical part that I really enjoy, knowing that this kind of lighting instrument isn't as bright, so I might need to up its percentage when I'm in the venue, and making the decision to cut that special over this special because this venue only has a total of 5 lights. So what should we do there, and things like that. Yeah, we travel the gel for the booms and any gobos that I may need.
Very good, very good, and some good terms there, students. If you don't know what those are, I won't have her tell you. You can go look them up because you need something right now, I think, right?
Absolutely.
So, one of the things Jerry J and others have talked to us about is that if you're a performer, that there, especially on Broadway, there's a limited number of availability of jobs and even touring. And I have a cousin who's an actor in New York City, and man, he tells me often he's jealous that I and others have told me that they're jealous because in community theater that I do as an amateur, man, I get all kinds of roles and I get to go. I'm always on the stage if I want, whatever it is. Is that the same in the tech world? Or would you say there's more jobs available if you're an electrician, or what's that availability look like?
Yeah. Simply, I've not stopped working since I left high school. I've always worked in my profession. I've never had more than a week of, what do I do? There are probably double the amount of jobs running the show technically than there are actors in the show. There are quadruple the amount of jobs than there are actors loading in or striking the show. We are always looking for people touring. There might be only one person per department that tours. Their touring companies are always looking for people because, especially tours, you can only do that for so long. You can only live out of a suitcase for so long. So people get tired of it or get too old, and so they are always renewing that. In New York City, there's supposedly a surplus amount of us here, but very few of us ever are out of the job. There's always something being done. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So even if I wanted to try to get into acting, this would be a great other skill to have to eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Walk dogs or wait tables.
Yeah.
Learn to skill and do this to pay the bills, and then that's great. That's some good wisdom. So one of the things you mentioned was being in the union.
Mhm.
And again, just kind of a good thing to know. Talk just a little bit to us about the difference between being in the union or being independent, and why one would be advantageous in some situations compared to the other.
So the union is actually one of the worlds where you wouldn't necessarily have to venture out of your discipline. There now, I know lots of people who do both props and audio and lighting work in the union, but if they are on a lighting call, you touch only lighting things. And so therefore you're more protected. You're not asking to also do 2 other jobs at the same time, as well as they're very strict on their breaks. You get a coffee break in the morning, you get an afternoon break in the evening. No matter how the day is going, you're going to get your lunch break, versus sometimes in community theater, you'll have your peanut butter and jelly sandwich in hand while painting the set.
Absolutely.
Another really cool thing that the union does do for you is they can supply health insurance, and they can supply like retirement accounts and things like so. Financially, the union then becomes your company that your parents may be more familiar with, because otherwise you're working on your own. You're getting your health insurance on your own. You are not most likely going to be loyal to a company that will provide those things as a freelance electrician. So the union can provide those regular things that people are more used to.
Very good. So, I think we would be doing a disservice to anyone considering any of the positions that we talk about in theater and life in general. But if we didn't also tell them that it's not always unicorns and rainbows,
Yeah.
or in this case, it's not always spotlights and specials, right?
Mhm.
There's always things that make it work, that make it a job, and that you just have to endure.
Mhm.
Without mentioning any names of people or anything, what are some of those? What are some of the things that here's a good way to put it. What are some of the things that you wish someone had told you when you were just starting to consider a career in theatrical lighting?
Yeah.
Design?
Number one, you're always on. You are always networking. You are always looking for that next job. I do not care if you have the next 2 months booked out with the same job. What do you do at the other end of that? And so I say that there's lots of work, but you are always making sure that you have that next step of work, which is a level of mental capacity that you don't need in other life positions. Also never burning a bridge, because you literally never. I most likely have worked with Jerry J in Kansas City. I recognize him. I can't place it. But that, and that's just it. Working in the Roadhouse in Columbia, Missouri, I've actually ran into those people that toured through Columbia, Missouri in New York City, and they recognize me because of my curly hair. So it's those kinds of things of like,
That's
you
great.
can't burn, if I was rude to them in Columbia, they wouldn't have given me work like they did give me work in New York City. So you're always on. You can't always have a bad day, and then on top of that, yeah, you're working long hours. The 10 to 12-hour days are normal. And if you like your job and you like who you're with, you don't even notice it. But it is, you have to enjoy what you're doing.
What about relationships in life? If you're on the road all the time, is that a difficult thing?
Yeah. My partner and I are both in the business, and we've actually been joking that this is probably the longest amount of time we've spent together at home since we started dating. So he also tours. He tours abroad versus I tour mostly nationally, and he's gone for longer periods of time than I am. And often those don't line up. We did FaceTime before it was cool. We travel to see each other at each other's jobs, which is kind of nice because then that hotel room's paid for, But it is definitely a different life that you have to accept and know about.
Yeah, and definitely something I think someone needs to consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before deciding that it's the career for them. So
yeah.
Very good. Well, this has been great. This has been great, Savannah. Talk to anything I've missed, anything wisdom bomb that you're just itching to drop on us and just blow our minds.
Not necessarily. I would just say know that going into this world that the finances will be your, like knowing how finances work yourself will be a good like key to success. And learning how to save money and budget yourself, like that is very much so still very important and something that is not taught anywhere. It doesn't matter what profession you go into. So
yeah, that's true. So learning good budgeting skills before you get into it, so you don't have to learn it through experience.
Yeah.
That's great. That's just good wisdom, like you said, all the way around. Well, as we draw this to a close and begin to transition into our Q&A time, and speaking of that, here we are transitioning to our live audience into a Q&A time. So if you have any questions that have come up, if you guys will go ahead and chat those in, I'm going to ask one last question here, and then we'll transition over to that and see what questions you have. So here's my last request for you, Savannah. You see over my shoulder here, we have a new corporate sponsor, Gateway Mortgage here in Ada. They contacted me. They saw the first episode. Michael is a huge fan of theater and the arts.
Awesome.
He wanted to support the show, so he said, "What can I do?" And so we created the Gateway. We're calling it the Gateway Mortgage Wall of Wisdom.
Okay.
What I need from you, you'll see up here, I have Jerry J's. Be nice and do good work. So you are going to have, I've got my gaff tape and I've got my paint pen. So you're going to give me just a quick snippet to put on the wall of wisdom, and we'll put your name and it'll live there forever. What is it? If you could go back to young Savannah in Shawnee, Kansas, America, and tell her one thing, like, what would that be?
Be enjoyable. Yeah, I think that might be it.
Okay.
In the end, like your skills are going to get your job, but the people wanting to spend 10 hours with you will get you a lot further than knowing the most recent technology.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Well, very good. Well, thank you. Man, such good stuff. Such a great time. I think we're ready now to jump over and see if we have any questions. So let me pull them up here. And Gabriel, and if I'm saying this right, I hope, Gabriel Herrera, Gabe, has a question. So Gabe, if you will unmute your microphone and just ask away.
Hi. So Savannah, if you weren't working lights, what part of theater would you end up working?
I think I would work somewhere in the props or paint world. I find that very creative, and you're always problem solving there. And so I think that's a pretty cool challenge that I would be up for at this point in my life.
That sounds fun.
Okay. Let's see. Ms. Perez from our feature school, Southmore High School in Moore, Oklahoma, has a question for you.
Hi, good morning. First of all, thank you so much for doing this with our students. We are really grateful for your time. You talked a little about money management and how they need to learn that skill, which I agree completely. Yeah. Can you talk to them a little about what kind of salaries they would expect to see at different levels of the lighting world, between your electricians, your designers, and your different levels of electricians? That might be valuable information for them to kind of know.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends regionally, because obviously salary are based off of like how expensive the city you live in. Electricians are going to make more than designers. I would say here in New York City, the minimum rate is about $25 an hour as an electrician, versus a designer will actually work for a fee. And that could be, the off-Broadway level of where a $25 an hour an electrician is working. The designer fee could be as little as only $1,000 for that show. And that could still be a week worth of tech, as well as creating the plot and all of that. So I would say I have friends here in New York City whose like year-end salaries range from $50,000 to over $100,000. The Union, a lot of them make over 100, and our off-Broadway electricians can make 50 or more, and then corporate is somewhere usually there in the middle. So I don't know if we were looking for specific numbers or not. And on tour, like, so I toured with the union. Their base minimum, they are weekly paid, so you get, you know, a weekly. And then on top of that, with any sort of tour, you'll get a per diem, which is a amount of untaxed money a week that is basically meant for you to spend on food, because they're admitting that you do not have the capability of cooking your own food or saving money that way because you're traveling. So typically that's roughly $55, $60 a day per diem wise. And then the salary minimum start for an assistant electrician is about $725 a week. So that is the union minimum. So they're not allowed to pay you less than that on tour.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So you could have a peanut butter sandwich for lunch and a donut for breakfast and a really good dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that money management.
Yeah. Yeah. And you learn to carry some oatmeal in your bag and things like that too. Exactly. So you can have that steak dinner.
Very good. Very good. Good questions. Good questions. So we have another question from Imperial Paradox. And if that is your real name, you are the coolest person I've ever met. So Imperial Paradox, if you will unmute your mic.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I wonder if they had to leave. I know we had some that may have had to leave early. So
I found it. Hello.
Oh, you found it.
Oh,
Hello.
there you
Hi,
go.
my name is Lizzie. Sorry, I used a different email.
Oh, that's okay.
Good morning. I would like to know, what advice would you tell yourself whenever you were unsure of where to go next, or like if you were ever feeling doubtful?
Mm-hmm. Hilariously, I think I would actually phone in my mom for this one because she's received lots of, oh my God, I'm out of work phone calls. And usually by the next day, that freak out has turned into productivity and I've gotten a job somehow, some way. So it's just stay calm. In the end, all you need to do, sometimes in New York City, I go and I sit at the lighting bar. There's a bar here in New York City that most lighting people go to. Often, I don't love to drink, so often I would go there and I'd convince the bartender to send me ginger ale that looks like a whiskey or ginger or something like that. And I would just sit in that bar, and by putting myself in view of the other lighting people, it reminded them I was around and it reminded them that I was able to work. By socializing. So, remaining calm and remembering that I have that outlet, that I could go do something like that, or sending emails. I have a list of contacts from who knows when that often I just reach out to when I get a little bored or lack of work. And so often those come back with, oh my gosh, I've forgotten about you, but I was just thinking this project would be perfect for you. And you're like, oh yeah. So remain calm. It's probably a good one.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, one last question from me that I always am curious about, is Broadway always the end all be all goal? I know as an actor, performer, we think, oh, the big lights, the big city, Broadway, I want to tread those boards. What about for a lighting designer, electrician, or is that the same usually, or?
Absolutely not. I don't ever want to design on Broadway. And Broadway was not at all my goal either. I think it depends on what kind of thing you want to design. I love the creativity behind it, and I love being, I want to work with the minimal equipment possible. I love being challenged and figuring out how I can do big, grand ideas at its minimalist. And things like that. And that's something that Broadway would totally not be okay with. Broadway is an empty black box and you get to choose whatever you want on there. And they've got all the fancy new equipment and things. So I think no matter what in this world, where you are does not declare whether or not you're successful. It's if you are happy in living in the career where you like to be, that's what declares you successful. I think there are some regional theaters out there that do absolutely brilliant work, and it's by people who didn't even go to school for this or didn't even, whatever. So it's really all about theater, and a lot of the reasons why we go into the arts is that we are a family. And if you are happy and in your own little family, then you've made it. You've made it past Broadway, right? Because yeah, that's what matters the most, I think, is the passion that everybody has for this.
Absolutely, and we had another question come in here, kind of a follow-up. So Elena Bryson, and I think this time-wise will be our last question. So Elena, it's all you. Bring us to a close here in questions.
Yeah, you said that you were always looking for the next job, but like, I was wondering how often you had to search for that job and where did you go for that?
It kind of depends. As a freelancer here in New York City, so when I first moved, I was looking for that next job on the daily. Sometimes corporate shows are typically at maximum 2 days of a load-in, or maybe even 4 hours of a load-in. So it was a daily making sure I had something for the next day. As a designer, I was, it was typically every 2 weeks, every month process. And then now that I'm with Ballet Hispanico at the moment, they are my primary. So I'm actually looking for things just to fill in, etc., or not looking for things at all because I'm with them currently I've been with them for about 1.5 years. So it really kind of depends at what point in that stage you are. When I was on tour, I was looking once a year, and it was when that tour is about to end and I was looking for the next tour. It kind of depends on where you are at.
Okay, very good. Well, Savannah, this has been awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And one thing we like to do, everybody that is here, if you will unmute your microphones, we are going to our hidden star that's usually hidden away and not getting to do the curtain call. We want to applaud you. So everyone unmute your microphone with me and let's applaud Belle. Thank you.
Thank you
Very much. Standing ovation. Well, very good. And again, thank you, Savannah Bell, for just, schooling us on what it means to be an electrician. We'll use the official term now in theater. And and don't forget her words of wisdom, be enjoyable. And we want to write that here on a piece of gaff tape. Give me 1 second because we want to add that to our Gateway Mortgage Wall of Wisdom. We'll put that right up here. And we want to thank, we go. All right there, add it to Jerry J's. And we want to thank Michael McElroy and Gateway Mortgage of Ada. They are our first corporate sponsor. We want to provide these for schools and for educators to be able to use for free. And so thanks to their generous gift, we're able to do that. And apologize, a little bit of popping, I'm told, was on the audio today. And you know what? That's going to get better thanks to donations like that. And for some great associate producers, we're going to call them, people who've donated some funds and just believe in the arts and believe in education and believe more importantly in you guys and the future of the theater, and that's you. So we want to thank them, and we're going to add every week. We'll get a little bit of wisdom from a lot of wisdom, but a little snippet that can write down on some gaff tape and put on the wall of wisdom from Gateway Mortgage. So that's it. That's it for this week's episode. Join us next week. We've got coming in next week Mike Ruckstad from Hamilton. He is one of the audio engineers there, and looking forward to just really digging in and getting to know what that experience is like. That'll be fun for all of us. But for now, we're going to leave you with the seniors of 2020 of Southmore High School in Southmore. Thank you for being our host school today. You guys are awesome. Great questions that you had. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace out. Stay safe and stay sane.